Lo-Fi Horror Guys Growing on You Live, Season 12, is brought to you by Error 4444. Error 4444 is a film distribution label based in the US that is dedicated to restoring and releasing cult action, horror, sci-fi, and exploitation films on Blu-ray from across Asia, which is absolutely sick. I am so excited for these releases and for this company. They strive to release hidden gems that are either out of print or have never had the treatment of, the Blu-ray, the DVD treatment in the US, and giving these films the collector's editions that physical media fans of world genre cinema deserve. So cool. I love it. Their first ever Blu-ray release, Anatomia Extinction, directed by Tokyo Gore Police director Yoshihiro Nishimura, is now available on their site exclusively at error4444.bigcartel.com. That is error4444.bigcartel.com. It's limited to 1,000 copies, and they have less than 25% of their stock remaining. So they're dwindling, and they're super limited. Horror collectors like myself eat this stuff up. Go and check them out right now. I have my copy pre-ordered, and I completely support these guys. I'm so happy to be working with them and them helping me out this season. This season is This Is Hell month. So excited. Really, really cool guests. Thank you very much for stopping by. Enjoy the episode. What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, the Lo-Fi Horror Guy. Welcome to another episode of the Lo-Fi Horror Guys Growing on You Live. Today, we are going to be having on the one and only Natasha Kermani. So cool. She is the director of, most recently, Lucky. And then she also did Imitation Girl along with some shorts. We're going to be digging into all that stuff, of course. This is going to be super, super cool, and I am very excited. Let's get her joined on in here. Let's see. Hey, Natasha, how's it going?
Hi. It's good. It's good. I'm really happy this is working.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's first and foremost, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for stopping by today. This is so cool.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome. This is my first Instagram Live. I'm pretty bad with social media, so you've brought me to a new paradigm.
Okay. Yeah, for whatever reason, it was just kind of one way or another. It started on here, and I've tried Zoom, and I'm terrible with technology, so it's like I've just kind of stuck with what I know, and make it work.
Awesome. Yeah, totally, 100%.
So here on Growing on You Live, basically, I have a couple of introduction questions, and then the remainder of the interview is about you and your craft, your career in film. And then I have one finale that I wrote just for this episode. So if you're all cozy, you're all comfy, we'll get this bad boy going.
All right.
Have some
fun.
I'm
cozy. I'm home like I've been for the last year. So
Yeah. Touche. Let me ask you, if you could host a drive-in double feature with Lucky and Imitation Girl, what movies would you have play with each movie?
That is a great question. For Imitation Girl, it's actually really funny. My friend Chelsea Stardust, who's also been on your show, and I have always said it would be really fun to do our movies together. So her Hulu, All That We Destroy, which also features an actress in like an inky, murky her being duplicated. So we've always sort of thought it would be fun to do a double feature of our two movies.
Totally.
So that's her. Yeah, that was her movie with the Into the Dark. And then for Lucky, I would just say another satire. I would say anything that's, like we're sort of on the horror side. It could be fun to do like, I don't know, probably not Idiocracy, but something like that. That's just goes like full absurdity. And maybe Lucky would be like the horror version, and then we would do like a comedy or something like that. Because I think one of the really fun things, unique things about Lucky is that it is sort of a satire in the skin of a slasher movie. So I think another movie that sort of is playing with that would be, or like Spinal Tap or something would be really fun.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's really fun too. And that's something, to kind of incorporate in a fun thing with horror is a lot of times different elements, like, you have comedy or satire, and you can get a good blend. And sometimes it might be a little hit or miss, but for the most part, it's always a fun time for sure. And
Yeah,
enjoying
agreed.
the mind.
Agreed.
All right. So my next introduction question here, you being a violinist, we're going to kind of dig into this a little bit here. As a violinist, if you could score a movie for any director outside of a movie that you're doing yourself, who would you love to work with?
Oh boy. Well, I absolutely love what Paul Thomas Anderson does with music. And of course, he has a
Oh, yeah.
composer, very capable composer, who's brilliant, Johnny Greenwood. But yeah, I love what he's doing. I would love to work with a friend. I have so many amazing women filmmakers in my world. And so I would love to, score for Chelsea or, for somebody who I know really well and who I really respect. But yeah, I would say PTA would be the dream. I'm shooting for the stars. I'm just going big right out the bat.
Okay. Yeah. And that's fun too, and kind of, in my research with little, with different things as far as interviews that you've done with Bria and, it's nice kind of having a little bit of a circle of just different people that you can kind of, even if it's not somebody necessarily in your circle, but someone that, you could be talking in conversation and they might know somebody outside of, your realm, that's cool and something interesting that I've picked up on a little bit outside, as a film fan, not being in the industry by any
making
means.
a film, yes, because making a film is so, trust is so integral to the process, and I think without trust and mutual respect and just like a baseline of honesty and communication, I think it's hard enough to get a movie made. So I think the reason you see a lot of people working within their network is because there is that pre-existing, again, baseline of trust and communication. So absolutely. For Bria and I, we already knew each other. And that was a huge part of why we were able to just jump right into this process of putting the movie together. So yeah, definitely.
Beautiful. Yeah, I can imagine that makes the process a little bit easier, and on top of all the other stresses going on. So that's nice.
Yeah, exactly.
So dialing it back as far as in your youth, being a young girl, what were some movies, even horror or not, that resonated with you early on that you were just a big fan of?
So I was really lucky. My dad is a big cinephile, so he really loved, sharing movies with me, and so that was like a really great sort of like early film school.
Okay.
I'll never forget. He once showed. He did the scene from Braveheart when they like pick up the pikes. The British are sort of like attacking them, and they bring up the pikes last minute. He's like hold, that scene. And then he showed, and then he stopped it, and he went back to, and then he showed me the Ride of the Valkyries sequence from Apocalypse Now, and he sort of showed them back to back. And I was so young, like definitely both of those movies were inappropriate for whatever age I was. And it was like film school. I'm not kidding. It was my dad, who by the way is a doctor. He is not a filmmaker. Being like, this is how you shoot a battle scene, like Braveheart and Apocalypse Now. And to this day, I'm like, yeah, that's how you shoot a fucking battle sequence, 100%. So I was really lucky. I had sort of like a, film 101 from my dad. But, the one genre he didn't love was horror because he's a big scaredy cat. So my introduction to horror was actually through science fiction. He loves science fiction. So, we would watch Alien. And that was sort of the first brush with like, oh, this is scary. There's monsters in this. Right. And then from there, I sort of discovered horror was a solo journey for me because he's not going to go down that path.
I was going to ask, was that something when your, journey into horror started? But so he just let you voyage on that on your own.
He did. I think like the scariest we got together was like Event Horizon, which is a very scary movie. But even that was like, really scary. He's like, he wants to fast forward through the gory, scary stuff. So he's much more, he's not a hardcore horror guy. So
okay.
So that was on my own.
Now you had mentioned the two scenes. Did he have any examples as far as, a war movie that he was like, look, this is how you do not do it? Did he have anything like that?
No, because he has really great taste, and so he was much more like positive. It would be like The Godfather was always on, and just these really staples of cinema. He's definitely not as interested, I would say, in like the scrappier stuff. So like I discovered Scorsese on my own. He's much more into like the big, Hollywood productions, but he did love Apocalypse Now. And those kind of big, ambitious films. I think he really is responsible for introducing me to a lot of those movies and old movies, so he loves like classic film, 40s, 30s, 40s, cinema and all that good stuff. So yeah.
Nice.
And by the way, my mom is a performance artist. So I kind of had, my dad on one side, showing me classic film, and then on the other side, just like wackadoodle art house stuff. And I landed somewhere in between. So yeah.
Okay. All right. What kind of paint us a picture as far as your local video shops or theaters. What were some things, even just saying scanning the aisles, what were some covers that drew your eye that maybe even at the time you weren't allowed to watch?
It's such a good question, and I'm really sad that like we're one of the last generations that you can ask this question to, because the video store was like, that was our church, was that was like really a huge part of it. And like going to see a movie with my dad was like the joy of all joys, and I think I just hope the cinemas will survive, but video stores are gone. I actually ended up working at a video store in college. That was like one of my first jobs when I left home, and then I worked at a movie theater in high school, of course. So
nice.
I did all the cliche things. I think the horror section was always sort of like was one of the last sections that I ventured to, again because my folks weren't really into it. So I remember Freddy Krueger scared the shit out of me. So any image, and the video store, actually they had a life-size cutout of him that would like lurk.
Oh my God.
He lurked in the back of the video store. So as a little kid, I was like, oh God, what's that? And then Pinhead was another one. So Hellraiser, I didn't actually see Hellraiser till a lot later. And I was always like really intrigued by Pinhead. Just like, again, any imagery of like the Cenobites and all that was like really engaging for me because it was sort of off limits. So I'd say like any of the really like creative, awesome prosthetics, those covers that had those great prosthetics, showy prosthetics, were really exciting. And I do remember Mortal Kombat coming out and us being too young for it.
Nice.
And like our friends' older brothers going to see it and us trying to like persuade them to let us watch it. So Mortal Kombat was another big one.
Nice. Yeah, that was one of those things where it was like, it was almost art pieces. You're kind of going through and you're looking at stuff, and you just would see certain things, and it's like you see something, say Hellraiser, and it's like, what would this story be about? Like, how the hell did they come up with this? Like it. So it
and then you turn
really
it
cool.
over. Then you turn the tape. Back in the day, kids, we had VHS tape. You would turn the tape around, and then there's like the little images, and you're like trying to look really close. You can't like you're trying to see what the heck is going on in this crazy ass movie. So that was a journey, and then of course much later, once I was able to like sort of get movies for myself, I could get into all that. But I was actually really lucky. Our local library, I was a total nerd, and I lived at the library. It was a huge part of my life. And for some reason, the guy who ran the like video department was like really awesome. Artistic guy, and he had like the best shit. It was so many great I discovered like Jim Jarmusch and Tim Burton, like all of this cool sort of like deep cut stuff that wasn't just like the latest blockbuster. So I have no idea who he is, where he is now, but like I tip my hat to you, sir, because he was killing it. The local library, video department. He's a hero. Nice.
Okay. You mentioned Jim Jarmusch. Have you seen oh my God, now it's slipping me. Is it The Dead Don't Die?
The zombie one? I actually haven't watched it yet. Yeah, the recent one. I haven't watched it yet. I'm behind with him by a few films, but
Oh, okay. That was a good one. That was it was I guess you just mentioning his name. I had read a lot about it, and there wasn't. I mean, reviews are reviews. I guess it is what it is. But man, that movie was really really cool, and it was completely different than what I thought. But he
Yeah.
kind of reinvigorated, that movie reinvigorated my interest in his movies. I went back and watched again because I'm like, man, this dude, he rules. I love it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I loved his vampire movie, the Tilda Swinton, the Only Lovers Left
Oh
Alive.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Really
Okay.
got me jazzed. Speaking of, sort of cross genre, that's a very funny movie. It's a very sly
Yeah.
indie vampire movie. So yeah, I think he's living in that really fun space where he kind of he dips his toe into whatever genre he wants. For me, it was
hmm
actually it wasn't Down by Law or any of his more famous films. It was Dead Man. It was his
Oh yeah.
Western, which is really interesting film. So yeah, that was one where, the video department in the library guy, he would like promote certain movies, right? He would like turn them face out. And so that's how I found Jim Jarmusch. But yeah,
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, good introduction for sure.
yeah.
What would you say, horror or sci-fi? What would be three scenes that you could say were forever ingrained in your brain after initially seeing them? You just something disgusting, gross, terrifying. Just what were some things that after you saw it, you could never unsee it again?
So I was and remain to this day a huge X-Files fan. So I would actually say, probably it was one of my gateways to horror was getting into the X-Files and just like going real hard with that show. And I would say like some of the moments in that show are really memorable and striking. There's the episode that I believe they banned from ever replaying called Home. That's a
Yeah,
incredibly
yeah.
upsetting. Like X-Files goes hard. That show does not give a fuck. They just went for it. So there's some imagery from that episode. I would say like quite a few very upsetting episodes that depart from the main arc of like the aliens, but actually goes more towards horror.
Mm.
And there's some really cool filmmakers. I mean, Vince Gilligan is writing and directing a lot of their really interesting episodes. So definitely the X-Files. This is more sci-fi than not, but 2001: Space Odyssey really changed my life. I watched that definitely also too young and had no idea what was happening. But like
Yeah.
to this day, I just like I just think of like brightly colored shapes moving slowly across the screen, and for some reason that is just like really ingrained in my brain and my filmmaker DNA forever and ever. So I would say, yeah, that movie definitely was mesmerizing and held, to this day still sticks in my brain.
Okay, nice, nice. Now, I have to ask, as far as from features to, shorts such as bereavement, humor and satirical elements, which is something that we've kind of already talked about,
Yeah.
were often appear in your work. And as far as, what have been some of your favorite comedic reliefs, maybe in movies that aren't comedies? So you have horror, you have sci-fi, different things, maybe characters, actors. What have been some of your favorite comedic reliefs?
Um, I think everything is funny. I think my sense of humor is like really off. I actually think Gone Girl is like the funniest movie ever, and like a romantic comedy. So I would say like just the tone of all of Gone Girl is just perfect. We were talking about Hellraiser earlier. I think the end when he just says his delivery of the line "Jesus wept" is like to this day just like floors me. It floors me. I love that. Yeah, I would say those tones. Another big horror movie growing up was Sleepy Hollow. So Tim Burton's
Oh, okay.
take on the Sleepy Hollow story. I also think it's hilarious. Like Christopher Walken has some really funny beats in that when he finally appears.
hmm
So yeah, I would say Sleepy Hollow has some great comedy, and then not so much horror, but again, Paul Thomas Anderson, I think, is somebody who's playing in that space where he'll have these very very dry moments of comedy. So like There Will Be Blood has when he's beating the shit out of Eli at the end. that it's kind of funny. He's screaming, I'll drink your milkshake. I sip it
Yeah,
up,
that.
that's like, that is a horror sequence. He's murdering this guy, but it's very slyly funny. So I think anything in that more dry space is also, I take a lot of inspiration from that.
Nice. Yeah. There Will Be Blood is certainly, yeah, that is one that kind of I don't hear a whole lot of people talk about, and it's a shame because that movie is so good. And
Oh
I
yeah.
I don't know. I remember seeing it in theaters and just that whole sequence with the milkshake, and I was just kind of sitting there like, what in the fuck is going
It's
on? Like
hysterical.
what is actually happening? And I was losing my mind laughing, and
Yeah.
other people I felt were kind of staring at me because they're like, what? Why is this dude laughing? And it was
I
great.
know,
So
but
definitely hit the mark.
PTA says it's funny, and it's like we're not crazy. He that's his humor. He's married to Maya
Yeah.
Rudolph. Like the guy gets comedy,
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
Phantom Thread is hysterical. Phantom Thread is a comedy. So yeah, I really
I don't
like
know if I've seen
that
that one.
drawing. Oh, you gotta watch it. You gotta watch it.
Huh. Okay.
It's really good.
Is it one of his older ones?
It's actually after There Will Be Blood. So it is a more recent. It is also Daniel Day-Lewis.
Hmm.
It's a very dry movie, but it's beautiful. It's a wonderful film. You should check it out.
Oh shit. Yeah, I don't know how I've never heard of that. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
Daniel Day-Lewis. I often follow a lot of his stuff too, just with his work is amazing. But
he claims it's
yeah,
his last
I'll have to check that
movie.
out.
Daniel Day-Lewis claims it's his last movie, but I I think we'll see more from him. I don't think that'll
Okay.
be the
Well,
end for
that's
him.
a shame. But I'm missing like so many things right now. Like holy shit. I'm gonna have to check that out because I did
Yeah,
not know anything about it.
if you're a Daniel Day-Lewis fan, you need to watch it. It's basically just him for the whole movie being amazing.
Okay. Well, I can't claim to being a huge fan of his right now because I don't even fucking know what this is. So I'll have to recant my comment there. So as
It's
far
okay.
as with pre-directing, you did interviews among different roles, kind of film adjacent. Regarding your interviews, just kind of from my experience in doing these, I wanted to ask as far as what were some notes that you had taken, possibly even subconsciously, that were almost like a on-the-job training for now making movies and directing.
Yeah, that was an incredible period of my life. We were basically right out of college. Some friends who now we run a company together. We were hired by a ebook publishing company to go like basically
Oh,
travel around the world and conduct interviews with authors. And it would be like supplemental material basically. And so I had this sort of incredible opportunity and experience traveling the world and the country and all over the United States and Europe and to speak with these kind of amazing authors of all sorts of types, including some great horror authors that actually opened up a lot of novels. So like horror reading was also opened up to me in a lot of ways through this experience. But
hmm.
yeah, I think, the thing is that with all of these people, it's just you understand how honestly how difficult it is to get your work out there and to be supported in a commercially successful way because these authors by the time I was interviewing them this was like their third fourth novel something like that and just their journey and how long it took for them and just that they had this drive this need to tell these stories and that's really what drove them and kept them focused on their work.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's what you mean by interviews or, I
No,
also
yeah, yeah,
worked in
no.
different, I also have worked in a variety of roles on set,
Mhm.
which I think is a separate conversation, but equally important, which is the technical side, and getting to know, how does a movie get made?
Yeah, right.
It's one thing to sit in your chair and stare at a monitor and tell people what to do, but do you really understand? Are you really processing, the details of mechanically how a film is put together?
Hmm.
Not all directors need that. I personally really, really value that experience and that ability to then have those discussions and those conversations with your department heads, with the technical members of your team. I think it, like composition, music composition, right? Being able to speak with
Yeah.
your
Okay.
composer and know what the fuck you're talking about is hugely important. So, so I'm sorry. I need to, express myself in a more polite way, but you know what I'm saying, though, just to know what
plain
you're
and simple.
talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
Well, it's funny too, you mentioning as far as, interviewing and some of these authors being, further into, a couple of books in, and then seeing Lucky, and then seeing some of the conversations that Bria's having, and like, God damn it, I'm still trying to like work out this book. Why are you talking about another one? Like, why is this
Right.
conversation already coming up? So that's kind of funny, and kind of brings even more of a light to that project, and working on that as well.
Yeah, yeah,
I
and
like that.
that's Bria's script, and I think there is a universality to that
Right.
experience for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that scene makes me chuckle
Yeah.
too, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, just like a universal thing as far as anybody kind of in that industry, may it be film or writing, different things like that. I think it touched on a lot of people's check boxes of, yeah, I've dealt with
Mm,
that bullshit. I can
yeah,
see it.
yeah, yeah.
When
It's like
Go ahead.
99% bullshit and 1% like really enjoying your craft. That's the
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
reality of it.
Okay. Where, let's see, what were initial steps as far as when you were first thinking about wanting to work in film? What were things, did you have maybe some projects in school that you made like a short film for, or did you like, where were kind of things that enlightened and sparked the interest in making movies?
Yeah, I think I mentioned my mother worked in theater at the time, and we were living in New York, and so I was exposed to art house theater. So basically, like
Mm.
avant-garde performance art, experimental theater from like really day one. Like she
Okay.
literally couldn't afford a babysitter, so it was like, here we
Bring you
go.
along. Yeah.
Get on the
Okay.
F train. We're going to the kitchen. So, again, I count myself as being extremely lucky to be exposed to that kind of stuff from such an early age, and just that idea of the creative arts as a profession, as a serious thing. And I think that is that is a huge advantage, because I think a lot of people have to go through that process of, it's not until they're much older that they realize, oh, I can do art, I can work in the arts as a job, like this is a thing that I can do professionally. And for me to already accept that from the beginning, I think it gives you a little bit more access to the idea of being a professional artist, working in the fine arts. And then on the other hand of that, growing up around these like really wacky, ultra creative people, I think opens up your brain and gives you this access to the again, not just your creativity, but the idea of applying your creativity into a product, right? So
Mm.
these incredibly creative artsy art house, avant-garde folks were putting on performances, and they were channeling it. And so you start to think, okay, I have all these ideas, I have all these images, I have all these instincts. How does this translate into, something, for me, it didn't end up being stage. It was to the screen, but, just starting to process that. So that was really from day one. That the theater and the arts were open to me. I remember, I think like in third grade, we had to do like a report on a job, right? Like, here's how you are if you're a doctor. And I remember I did Julie Taymor, who's a big theater director. She, so,
Okay.
even if you're like 8 or 9 years old talking about Julie Taymor, you're like, okay, this is my path.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so yeah, again, I just count myself very fortunate to be exposed to the arts in that way. And then, of course, on the other hand, I had my dad, who we were, talking about, really pushing, the idea of film, just because he loved it so much. And so,
Sure.
looking at Francis Ford Coppola as a filmmaker and being like, this is really cool. I dig what this guy is doing.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, the answer is like, day one. And then it was just about shaping my education and my portfolio as I got older, getting my first camera, making my first movies, expanding that out a little bit more in high school. And then, putting together my submission for NYU, to go to Tisch. That was my dream always, was to go to Tisch. And going to Tisch, doing
Okay.
that. So it's really just been, step from the beginning. It's not a
Sure.
very
Okay.
satisfying
Yeah.
answer.
No. No. That's no. That's cool. I mean, and that's funny as far as like with mentioning too, like your mom working on the stage and different things. Have you ever done anything as far as directing or acting in plays?
I'm a terrible actor, so no acting, no acting.
Okay.
I am a performer, so I've played music. I've performed music
Yeah. Okay.
many times, and I'm very comfortable performing through the instrument. That's a comfortable space. Yeah, theater, it was briefly of interest to me. I think that I am a very technical person at the end of the day, and I was really intrigued by the magic of movies. And so for me, it was like as soon as I sort of figured out like, oh, that's theater and that's cool and that's got its own mystique. And, again, being in New York, it's a theater town, right? It's so beautiful. But then film was exciting to me because it was different. It was like we're going out of the black box. We're getting out of the stage. Now we're going into the world, or we're creating worlds. And so that was really appealing to me. And once I started down that path, it was just, about figuring out how it worked and how
Sure.
to,
Okay.
you had that, that image of the ringleader in the circus, and it's like this wild circus with all this crazy technical stuff that's constantly changing and evolving. And to me, it was like the ultimate challenge in my mind was like, how the hell do you put a movie together? And so that was really, for me, falling in love with it and falling in love with those old photographs, like those historical photos of like these guys in the 30s LA just like out in the desert with like a tripod and a big box on top of, three legs.
Yeah.
That was like, whoa, how does that become Charlie Chaplin, So that
Yeah.
mystique was
Okay.
very engaging for me.
Wow. Okay. So digging into it was your first feature was Imitation Girl. Now the concept was something real wild where you have I guess not necessarily to describe the movie, but you have an actress who plays both an alien who ends up landing on Earth and an actress who is in a completely other world, still on Earth, but completely different space. So if you were to, just to say hypothetically, you were an alien, you crashed on Earth, and you could take the body of any actress, actor, anybody from a movie, who would you want to be for a day? Very off kilter.
It's a really good question, and I love it because what I love, this is a terrible answer to your question, but I think what I love about this is like you do get to be these characters when you watch a movie, like
Yeah.
you do get to be it. And you think about like Trinity is the baddest bad bitch of all time, and Trinity from Matrix 1, the first Matrix movie, like that chick is cool. I feel like any character that like really has a lot of freedom, and to me that's embodied. Catwoman is like probably my answer to you because she lives in a world with no rules, and she's living in this world that to me feels very real, meaning that it's violent and chaotic. And
Yeah, right.
she is a beast that survives and thrives in that environment, and I love that idea, and that's a lot of fun. And I think the wish fulfillment of being part of a rogues gallery is very appealing. So I would say any iteration of Catwoman, probably Michelle Pfeiffer because she's the best. But
Nice.
yeah, that's probably my answer.
I love that. Hell yeah. Doing some ass kicking throughout the day and just taking some
Just do your
names and
thing.
going right on back. Yeah.
No rules, no rules. Look, the universe doesn't really have rules, so why should we obey them, right? Like she does what she needs to do. That's it.
So sick. Yeah. So touching on Imitation Girl, I guess right off the bat, a little bit of a not necessarily a synopsis, but where did the idea come from? Where did the inspiration come from? As far as with two people completely on different worlds and both yet somehow on Earth.
Yeah, it's such a good question, man. I think like these projects, they just come and they like are part of your brain and you kind of forget like where the seed came from. I was very interested in doing something genre, so I knew I wanted to do something sort of in a sci-fi space, and I had been working with an actress named Lauren Ashley Carter for actually a few years at that point, so I knew I wanted to sort of design something around her. And I had forgotten about this, but this is actually, it was originally part of I think it was supposed to be 3 short films that I wanted to do that was called Imitation Girls. And it would be her playing 3 different versions of imitation. So the first one being what ended up becoming the feature, which was an alien, which was 2 separate storylines. And I was very sort of interested in mirrors and duality and having, one actress playing two roles and that sort of idea of playing with that. And that one I think was called Mirror. So it was it was a mirror structure.
Oh, okay.
The second one I think was called Morph. And Morph was she's like a normal sort of like homebody girl who starts to turn into her favorite actress. So she's watching like a show, she's like obsessed with this actress, and then her face and herself starts to turn into that actress. And,
shit.
So that was Morph. And then the third one I think was called Stitch. I haven't thought about this in years, but I think it was called Stitch. And that one was, she is a plastic surgeon and she turns herself into a different person, just through her own. It was like a body horror kind of self-plastic surgery thing. Yeah. So that was the original intention, actually. I was remembering, I was like, yeah, it was 3 short films was the original intention. And then of course from there, we selected the first one, and the team and I just sort of developed it out of that. And we also had this sense, again, talking technically, we had this sense that we would have the ability to probably get enough money and resources together to shoot like the first half of something. So the film is designed to basically be shot in 2 parts intentionally, because we just went out, shot the first half, raised more money off of that, shot the second half, put it all together, and voila, you have 85 minutes of movie. So,
Okay.
It's a journey, man. Like it starts as one thing, as a seed of an idea, and then by the time it's like out in the world, it's like completely transformed, probably for the best, right? Like, that's part of the process. But
yeah.
But that is the origin story of that movie.
Man, and some of the other stories, that would be killer if there was ever an opportunity to have some of those, come to fruition, because damn, those sound sick. That sounds so cool.
Yeah, maybe I'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very cool. I mean, that's I think I was speaking with, I can't remember who it was recently, but they were mentioning how anthologies in general, it's a little bit of a more difficult kind of subgenre in horror to take on. And as far as production companies, and like I say, myself, I have no idea what the fuck any of this stuff applies, but but as far as I could see, as far as taking one of the features and then just going full length with that, being a good resolve. And the end product, I mean, that movie was sick, completely different than what I was thinking I was in for, but effective for sure.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, and it's also backing into the resources that you have, right? And I think we were like, oh, this one we can do. Like the other ones are a little bit more expensive, I think, to make, which is, I don't know, maybe I'll make them down the line.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. I think that's exactly right. And it was also just like looking at Lauren as an actress and really wanting to shape something around her and her fantastic acting abilities. And then just pulling in my other interests from there. But we didn't know what we were doing with that first movie. It was like, we weren't thinking like, oh, this is not a very sellable concept. We were just like, we're good at making movies. This is cool. We have these resources. Like, let's put it together and make it happen. And that is exactly what happened. So now I'm jaded and cynical and, know what commercial means. But that was a simpler time.
Okay. So post Imitation Girl and doing more work, and you've kind of moved on to a more smoking a pipe and having the robes on all day, and that more of
exactly
a twisting of mustaches, if you will. Daniel Day-Lewis. Yeah. That's the image I get.
Maybe that's who I would imitate. It's either Daniel Day-Lewis as Reynolds Woodcock in Phantom Thread, which you haven't seen yet, but you will, or Catwoman. Yeah. So maybe a blend of Reynolds Woodcock and Catwoman is that would
perfect.
Be
Perfect.
my ethos.
This gets even better. Let's see where it goes throughout the interview, because I'm excited to hear where it keeps on going. So as far as one other question I had with Imitation Girls. So in writing, directing, and then you also co-scored it with Kevin, is it Hufnagel?
Hufnagel, yeah, he's amazing.
Hufnagel. Okay.
Yeah.
So taking on all of those roles, were there certain things to where looking back on it, it kind of served as a learning lesson for further projects? And what were other things that you learned in that you took from it and you're like, okay, this worked, I can dive right in, I can do all this shit myself?
Yeah, well, we did a lot on that movie ourselves. So we had sort of put together a lot of resources with my production company through just sort of doing branded content and commercial work and that kind of stuff. And so a lot of that is what ended up making the movie possible. So I think following that thread, right, like knowing whatever resources, whatever technical aspects, whatever creative aspects, whatever network aspects, right? Like building up your crew, building up your team. The more self-sufficient you can be, I think is going to work to your benefit. And I know, a lot of directors come through writing or producing, and it's a little bit more of a solo thing, and it's a solo approach. And I think that there's a lot of struggle for them to sort of find the resources, and they really lean on outside people, be it their producers or the production company or whatever it is. And for me, it's like, that's actually a really scary idea, because I want to bring the team to the table and develop it with them from the ground up, right? Like, it's not like, hey, what are you doing in 2 weeks? It's like, no, we're building this together, So I think bringing that attitude, to the extent that I can, to everything that I do, that's really important to me. And I think that it is ultimately successful. And a lot of these filmmakers do that, it's like, I have a lot of respect for like somebody like Chris Nolan, right? Who produces his own stuff. He has his own company, Syncope. And so it gives him, it's not about control, right? It's not about control. It's about trust, and it's about having a system in place that is functional. And so that's something I think we started to understand on Imitation Girl, and that I hope to continue developing and building and becoming having a stronger and stronger foundation on which to jump off into projects.
Sure.
What other stuff, like make sure that your ass is covered, because making a movie is really hard. It takes a really long time. So like make sure you have enough money to pay your rent and like not, go broke halfway through is really huge. So yeah, like logistical stuff. Yeah. But creatively also, like making sure that you feel 150% confident in your script. I think that is something that I value now a lot. And putting that time and not rushing it, not bringing a script out and towards production until you feel like, yes, this is here. The problems are figured out. Easier said than done, by the way, because, a script is never finished and all that. But I think I had a little bit of an attitude of like, let's just go out and shoot it. The visuals are more important than this, than that. And I think now really being more, look, I'm older, I'm more patient now. So I'm like, let's just take the time. There's no rush. We can take a few more months and keep developing this. I think that's really important.
Nice. Okay. Tell us about the finale sequence there. So you've got a body melting, you've got a bed sinking. There's a lot going on, and just kind of the process. Tell us a little bit about what went into making that all possible.
Yeah, that was always, it's interesting. Like when you come to a project, you're like, this is the sequence, like this is the one that we have to really protect with our resources and make sure it comes through. Yeah, we devised a whole bunch of stuff where I was like, it started, I was like, I want to sink Lauren into a bed of oil. Like, how do we make that happen? Like, this is how this movie ends. She's like going to sink into the bed. Again, where did that come from? I have no idea. It's just like, this is what we should do. Yeah. Okay, that made sense in my brain. That's how you're like transported to the universe. Sure. So we had a whole bunch of like sort of tricks that we were trying, like sort of like lowering her down into a frame. And so the end product ended up being a combination of that effect of her being sunk down. And then we ended up actually doing a few layers of it. So we shot her, she's just sort of like performing as though she's going down, and I'm sort of cueing her like, okay, now you're halfway down. Now you're 3/4 of the way down. Now you're out, and it's just your fingertips, you know? So, but she's just lying there, right? And she's just acting. um,
Yeah.
and then we shot, you know, clean frames of it, and then digitally just lowered her down. So it was sort of a combo meal of all of those techniques. But that brings up an interesting thing, which is, you know, how to use visual effects on an indie, right? And like being really specific about exactly what you need. Here's the viewpoint. We're not getting any close-ups. This is how it's playing out, you know. And if you can do that and you can allocate your resources, it's still hard, but you know, you can pull it off. You can pull it off
Yeah.
with
Oh,
visual effects.
oh. Oh, okay. Yeah, that was, you know, it was certainly it was one of those things. And that was my impression. I mean, as far as with the finale of it was that they're sinking down and that's, you know, they're going off into whatever other realm that
Yeah, it's like
she
a
came
portal.
from. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
okay.
her.
Okay.
It's the bod. The oil is the liquid is from the body of the alien who sort of disintegrates and becomes a portal to, you know, her side of the world. And the idea being, you know, now, you know, we just watched 80 minutes of an alien in our world. If there were to be a sequel, right? It's 80 minutes of a human in their alien mirror universe. You know,
Mm.
so yeah.
Also sounds sick.
This will be fun.
That sounds cool. Yeah. Shit.
Alien goo creatures, oil goo creatures. Yeah. Too
I
much X
like it. All
Files.
right.
Too
So
much X
yeah.
Files going on.
So moving on to Lucky. So one of the first things that I had noticed automatically and kind of from like the first note was the score. It just, you know, kind of jumped out to me. It became a character within the movie. Tell us about Jeremy Zuckerman becoming involved in the process.
Jeremy is amazing. He's an incredible talent. I'm very excited to hear more of his music as he continues to write and create.
Mm-hmm.
He did the soundtrack for the Scream TV show. So one of our producers, Rob,
Oh,
I
okay.
think had heard his music through that, or had like it was on his radar, and so, you know, just on a whim, I think he reached out to Jeremy like on social media, like Twitter or something, and Jeremy, you know, being very kind, was like, sure, that sounds interesting, you know, why not? So it's one of those total fluke things of like, you know, I'm not brave on social media, but you know, our producer was like, "Sure, why not? Let's give it a go. Maybe he'll say yes." He did. We met, and you know, I started listening to his music, and I was like, "This is really great. The Scream music is great." Honestly, the music on that show is like, that show has no right to have music that good. It's really really great film music he was doing for that show. Anyway, I found his solo work, which was a little bit more avant-garde, a little bit more experimental, sort of like sound art. And so when we met and sat down, we sort of had this really sort of honest, open conversation about being asking, you know, hey, maybe this is a space that you're more interested in exploring, you know? And so for Jeremy, look, he's not making money on this thing. He's probably losing money on it, like all of us, you know? It's like, why do we make indies? I have no idea. But we do it because we get to explore new territory and we get to try new things. And so I think he was excited by the idea of doing something with a lot more artistic freedom. And so that's how he got involved, and it was just a pleasure. It was a pleasure to work with him, and I think we had a really great, very fast, intense period of actually putting the score together. So our initial conversations happened before we even started filming. So we had these sort of initial ideas. He was sort of putting together some demos, right? Like starting to play with the sounds, the instrumentation, pinning down, okay, this seems interesting, this is not quite right, blah, blah, blah. But the actual process of putting music to image, I think we did in like 2 or 3 weeks. It was crazy.
Oh,
It was
wow. No shit.
so fast because we got into South by on a rough cut. So it was still temp music. And they're like, psych, the movie's playing in 6 weeks. And we were like, oh, fuck, we gotta make this movie. so we put the score together really fast. And Jeremy and I still say to this day, we're like, you know what? I think that was actually perfect because there's something really beautiful about just a really
Sick.
intense, focused, right? You're not even asking questions. You're just going with your gut. And afterwards we went back and we would look at the score and be like, oh, that's what we were doing. Now it makes sense. But, at the time we were
Nice.
just going with our instincts and just flying as fast as we could. Talking every day. I think he would like text me demos, and I'd throw on my headphones and listen. And so it was a really fast process. And also it's possible because of the way that he works. He was using I think it's called like Note Collider or something. It's this very cool. I actually, when we released the movie on Blu-ray, one of my goals is to do a mini doc with him on
Oh,
his process
nice.
of building the score, and so I can actually like interview him and because I'm like, I need to know, I need to see this, I need to see this, how he did this crazy stuff. But so it was a very technical, is a lot of it. He recorded a variety of samples with live artists, and then he built this incredibly sort of complex score out of that. But what that meant is within a few minutes we could go back in and change a few things around, which is why we were able to put the score together
Oh,
so quickly.
wow. Damn. Okay.
So
Nice. Was
yeah.
was there any piece or any section to where after you saw it, piece to the scene that it was supposed to be in, that it made it that much more effective?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say the end of the parking garage sequence, which is the big sequence of the movie, where the world sort of opens up. It's a track called All the Men. And that was
Okay.
really wonderful because I had an idea of what the tone would be. And we had been, so also I temped the whole movie with his music. So that's another
Hmm.
fun thing to that I'm definitely going to keep doing into the future. If I'm working with another composer, I'll just use their music to temp and
Hmm.
not use other movies' music. It would just be like their own personal tracks. Um, and so I had been using some of his other stuff, and it was a little bit like slower and more subtle or whatever. And he kind of came in with this really ballsy, um, present, melodically driven, fast tempo track that for me I really was excited about because it brought the scene to the level that I wanted it to be from the beginning. So when I read the script, that was the tone that we were trying to hit, and we just weren't hitting it until
Hmm.
he brought his music in, and it was like, okay, great, now the pace is there, now I understand the movement of it as she's sort of getting away from the parking garage and going back. The movie continues from there. But I would say for that sequence, it was really nice to sort of notch up exactly to that tone and the yeah, I would say like the pace, but also just the energy that I had wanted that was lacking until it came in. Um, and only
Oh,
that
okay.
piece,
Okay.
and only that piece hit it, right? Because the other sort of temp tracks we were using was like, meh, it's in the background, but it's not present. So.
Okay. Nice. There's there one particular scene I picture right now. I believe they're running up the man is chasing her up the stairs, May. And
Mm-hmm.
it almost, kind of like on the line with like satirical and things. It was almost like a psycho sounding, like
I
really
love that.
stagnated,
Yeah.
couple of notes. But what it reminded me of, have you ever seen Maximum Overdrive?
I don't think I have
I think
actually. No.
that Stephen King directed
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. No, I actually don't think I've ever actually sat and watched it. I know what
Oh,
it
dude,
is. I guess I should watch it,
there's
huh?
there there is definitely, like, that was the moment that I fell in love with Jason's work. Was it almost reminded me of like a mix of these parts in Maximum Overdrive where the things attack or whatever, and it's a silly kind of sound, but then it was a little bit more, like scary, like Psycho, where that scene came and I'm like, dude, this guy is killing this shit. Like, this is awesome.
I'm so glad you brought that scene up. I think that is actually my favorite moment with the score, because I mean, I was laughing out loud. We're talking about comedy, like dry comedy.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And you know, I think some of the initial stuff that the editor had thrown in was like this very sort of serious action, you know, like I'm like, no, it's funny. It's funny. It's fucking funny. Like, she pushes him down the stairs and she pokes over and he's there and it's hilarious. Like, it's Scream, you know, it's not you know, it's not like a super dark moment. We're going to lean into the absurdity of it. And Jeremy 100% got that. And he actually, I think, had a lot of fun with that note of like, make it funny, have fun.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I love that moment.
With the score being very much a character, kind of like the actors, the actresses, you know, an example I could say is something with Jaws, where the score, the music in Jaws is very much, you know, just as much an actor or just as much a character as the actors. What would you say is a movie that you love where the score is very much, you know, a character just as much as actors, actresses, different things?
I love music. Obviously, I'm a musician, so this is like a really tough question for me because I think score is always a character if it's good. You know, if it's a good score, then it is as present as the camera work or the acting. So you know, really, it's like any great score. We're talking about Braveheart, you know, that is the character in the movie. That is Scotland, right? Like, that is the character of the heart and soul of the movie, is that music that you're hearing. One of my favorite movies of all time, but especially when I was falling in love with cinema, is Blade Runner. It's like absolutely one of my top movies. And I think that score is a character. So in the way that, you know, Braveheart's score works hand in hand with the direction and what's happening on screen. Whereas, you know, if we're talking about scoring as a character, Vangelis's music in Blade Runner is absolutely absurd. Like, it is absolutely absurd. And so I would say in that way, where it's like a quirky character that's like poking in, you know, it's like, hey guys, here I am. Here's like a sexy 80s synth saxophone version of Too Good to Be True, you know? Like, so I would say that score in Blade Runner. And then just in terms of scores that I go back to all the time, Michael Nyman. Michael Nyman's he's a sort of avant-garde composer. I guess he's like the same generation as like a Philip Glass, right? Like, everybody will talk about Philip Glass because he changed the game. But Michael Nyman, I think, is actually really interesting. You know, his politics are a little old, but his music is really important. I think, you know, he's somebody who I can go back to quite a bit in terms of being very present as a score, not just there as an emotional crutch, right? Because what you don't want to do is use your music to help your shitty direction, right? Like, you don't want that. You want your scene to be fantastic, but the music to add something to the theme or the content of what we're watching. So again, not an emotional crutch, but an extra layer of the storytelling. And so I think Michael Nyman does that with his work. And today, I think Johnny Greenwood is doing that work. I think, you know, again, talking about Paul Thomas Anderson, his score, their collaborations are really important, where he is embracing, you know, the period, the tone, the mood, the character, in really explicit ways. And I mean, in being like, you know, there's this horrible sort of like Orientalism that film scoring went through, where it's like, they're in Japan, so now you hear like a coda, you know? Stupid and not, and old fashioned and not interesting. So Johnny Greenwood is really, I think, looking at not just the instrumentation, but the production of his score. Not just the writing and composition, but actually the production of it. He has this really like beautiful holistic approach to the score, which is how I like to approach my filmmaking. And so I think he's doing that work right now. And I think all of his scores are really unique in that way. And not always, Jeremy and I talk about this a lot. There's a temptation to just make the most beautiful music that you can and show off as a composer and a director and just like let the music sing. And that's not what we're doing here, right? Like, we're not writing a symphony where people are just meant to I hope that people sit and listen to our score, but that's not its primary purpose. It is
Oh
there as
yeah.
part of the cinematic experience. And so that the composers who are resisting that temptation, and I see Johnny Greenwood doing that, where he's doing the score that the film needs and not the score to serve his own ego, right? And make the most beautiful melodic, listenable music that he can. So obviously I love him. And then the last one I'll say is I've just been listening. I'm working right now on a project that's set sort of like turn of the century America. It's like a Western sort of thing. And I've been listening
Oh.
a lot to the score for Assassination of Jesse James, which is Nick Cave and
Oh,
Warren
nice.
Ellis wrote the score. And it's just, it's a beautiful complement to the cinema that, that the director was making. So it's just a few.
Sure.
I can talk about this all day.
No, I love that. And I think that's kind of that's something where, a lot of times, you can ask about actors and you can ask about, specific scenes and different things, but the music, one of the things that I've absolutely loved about this opportunity is being able to ask about the artists, maybe some of the people that did the cover work, or some of the people that maybe did custom artwork in the background that, somebody looks over and it's like, no, that shit's cool. Like, who the fuck did that?
Yeah.
So I definitely appreciate, hearing about those things too. And kind of, going further along with that too, the cinematography. That was one thing I really wanted to ask about because, color really plays a role in the movie and kind of with certain, characters and things. But as far as the cinematography really pushing the visuals, tell us about Julia Swain and, what she really brought to the table as far as
Yeah.
for working on Lucky.
Yeah, Julia's brilliant. She truly loves cinematography, which is cool. Meaning like she sees the script through the lens, no pun intended, through the lens of her craft, which I really appreciate because I think as a filmmaker you come to it and you're looking at it through it's like a prism and you're looking at like all of the different aspects of it. And so to have a collaborator like Julia come on and really look at it and all of the opportunities that you may not be, focused in on and with such specificity, I'm really grateful for. Really what I'm saying is she has her own autonomy as an artist, right? Like she's coming in and she's saying, okay, I understand this is what you want. What if it was like 2 degrees this way, right? Like what do things get more interesting if we do it this way slightly? So I really appreciate that. And I think at the end of the day, she really understood, she says most movies have one look, and that's like the look of the movie all the way through. And I think she really understood the idea that this was a movie that started in one place and ends in a very different place. And so a lot of our conversations were about, almost every scene as we move forward is changing and evolving. The look of the movie is evolving as you go through. And so we had a lot of really interesting, like at one point we were talking about doing different aspect ratios, that like the movie starts spherical and then like changes to anamorphic lensing, playing around with that kind of stuff, which we didn't end up doing, but we did do some crazy like different filtration. Even our choice of lenses was very much, it was motivated in a lot of ways that we wanted to bring the audience in at the beginning into a cinematic experience, right? Like to tell them you're not watching reality. Like this is a movie. This crazy shit is going to happen. And and so choosing those lenses, and then within that sort of choice that we had made, we knew we wanted anamorphic. We knew we wanted something slightly with a vintage feel to it, that still had a sharp modern sharpness. And then playing around with filtration and then in post, working with our colorist, who's an amazing colorist at Photochem, Alistair Arnold, evolving the look in post. So we actually had 2 different, when you're on set, you can use something called a lookup table, which is like a look that you're applying to your footage. And so we had actually 2 different LUTs that we would apply depending on where we were in the movie that sort of acted as these big picture ideas, like, okay, now we're at the end of the movie when things are like really crazy looking versus like at the end, the beginning of the movie where things are, the cooler colors, it's a little bit more neutral. So just all those little things. And she was so on board to explore all of those options,
Sure.
Yeah, while also knowing that, like, you have very limited resources, very little time, very little money. So how to reconcile those dreams with the reality of actually putting it together. But yeah, we had a blast, and I'm really interested in camera movement and being really specific with how you are covering scenes. And I think she also shares a love for, again, that kind of specificity when approaching a scene. So, the shot listing process with her was really, it's always essential, but I think it was especially creative because we really allowed ourselves to, because we had this idea that the look of the movie is changing, that every scene we would be like, okay, so now maybe now we're a little bit farther away from her, but we're using a longer lens, and it was fun to sort of find, like, okay, how is the look changing now that we're at this part of the movie?
Right. Okay. Okay. I think it's fun too, as far as, I mean, you mentioned with like the budget and, just kind of limited resources and different things. I think that's one thing where, utilizing the tools that you have at hand and really, pulling out that imagination and being like, for whatever reason, Sam Raimi always comes, to mind as far as his earlier Evil Dead movies, and it's just being the most ridiculous shit, and like, how can I pull this off, practically? How can I, make this happen to where it's not, what I want it to be? So I think that's fun, as far as, even mentioning just different looks to things, or even a canted angle, do you remember anything as far as maybe even a specific scene that you saw a way being shot, and maybe Julia had mentioned, like, what if we shot it, looking up or something? Did you have any example of something like that where that?
Yeah, I think yeah, I like shots that start in one way and end in another, and you can play almost the entire scene without it being a locked off shot, so that the shot is moving and evolving and developing as the content of the scene is happening. And I think she took that sort of broad idea and actualized it a few times in the movie, really beautifully, really nicely, where, either it's like a long, slow push in where we have the background doing a certain thing so that we end, in a close up, or whatever it might be, moving around somebody. So by the end, you have a piece of information that you didn't have at the beginning. I think she really embraced that, that challenge of, how can we cover this in one shot potentially? And I think she really brought a lot of interesting ideas to that sort of, again, general direction.
Nice.
Yeah, I would say many times. I mean, all the shots in the movie are a collaboration between her and me. I'm not framing up the camera. I brought her on the team. If I want to do that, I shoot the movie myself, right? Like, you bring somebody on because you want their creativity, and you want their brain power in it. And I have immense respect for her and her brain. So I think every shot in the movie really is her interpretation of what I was asking for.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Yeah. I asked that, and then just pretty much as it came off my lips, I started thinking about, that's her fucking job. I'm like, oh,
right.
Okay, well, that's a lot of.
But I think it's a good question. I think it's a good question because I think also there is this idea of ego that gets in the way a lot, and that. Oh, I'm the director, I need to, this and this. And it's like, you're there. It's a collaborative art. Inherently, it is a team effort. And so to shut yourself off from people's creativity, to me, is insane. So, you have your team there for a reason. Hopefully they're good at what they do. If they're not, that sucks. Yeah. You have to come in and do the heavy lifting. But I think with all of the department heads, there was a really beautiful collaboration of, I would state the intention, and then we would have the conversation out of that larger intention. It was never a conversation of, with our production designer, LB Minnick, drew a lot of the paintings. Speaking of paintings in the film, a lot of the artwork is her own artwork. So it was never like, draw me a photo of this. It was like, this is the ethos, this is the intention. I need something that conveys violence towards female bodies, right? That was one of the pieces of direction that I gave to her. And then she comes and she brings what she does, and that is the beauty of this process. It is not, you're not a painter in a room by yourself although that's not real either because that's collaborative too. But anyway, it's not a solo art. It is an interesting cinema is interesting because it is the product of many brains coming together under really hard circumstances to bring something to life. And I think to not take advantage of that is insane.
Nice. Good answer. Yeah, I like that. I like that. I like the, the elaboration too, as far as taking that a little bit further though. So yeah, thank you. So one thing that I had heard you mention in another interview was you had mentioned, and anybody who hasn't seen the movie, maybe even stop watching or, cover your ears or something, but you had mentioned the mask, the man's mask, and the names being across the mouth. And I was just like, how the fuck did I not see that? And I went back and I watched it. And I'm like, dude, it's right there. Like, that is so insane. So with little small, different details, like that, for example, were there certain things that maybe were brought up pre or that you had written, with it being a single location? Were there different things that were brought up that maybe didn't make the cut, as far as maybe were too in your face?
Yeah, like too explicit. We did actually. There's actually a few that I thought were very explicit that some people catch and some people don't. Like the killer is actually in the background of a lot of the shots. So if you go back and look again, you'll actually see him lurking in shots and stuff, which is directly stolen from Mike Flanagan. But
okay.
Which he stole from other people too, so it's fine. We all steal from each other. Yeah, I think there were. It's funny because the answer is kind of no. Like, we ended up using pretty much all of the crazy stuff. When, for example, she's at the book reading, and LB, our production designer, was like, "Oh, what if the cookies have little sad faces on them?" And I was like, "That's hysterical. Let's do it." And it's in the movie.
Nice.
Which is insane. Nice. It's like she's at this book reading and somebody made a plate of unhappy face cookies.
Yeah.
So we just did it, man. Like, it's just there. I mean, the table that she's eating at, the centerpiece changes. It's like an octopus sculpture, and then it turns into a skull. It's like pretty explicit things that we're switching out and changing. And I think because the movie is so expressionistic and it is like this Alice in Wonderland, Twilight Zone journey into the bizarre, we didn't really censor ourselves that much. And I think we probably could have gone even further, honestly. Probably could have had way crazier stuff in there, and people would have been on board. So, there's a lesson for the future.
Yeah. I like that. That's fun. And I can say the first time that I'd watched this then, so that I saw it on Shudder, and it was, let's just say a weekend, and I had a couple of drinks and I'm watching and having fun with it. The scene where May is washing her face in the mirror, and I'm watching, and it was probably 4 fucking times of me watching this, trying to figure out the little small mirror up top, not mirroring what the fuck she was doing. And I'm like, I'm not
You're like, did I have too many drinks?
I'm like, what is happening? And it was one of those things where it was like, even at certain moments, it wasn't too far to where, it could still have just been kind of a weird angle or something, but little details like that, I absolutely loved. I appreciated it. And I just kind of went back because there were things where at certain times I had to rewind, back, because I'm like, am I missing this? Am I seeing this right? Like, so that was fun, as far as, different ways of being creative with kind of falling into, this scenario of kind of descending in a sense and things crumbling.
So that reminds me, we did pull back, actually. That does remind me, because we did play around. There's another sequence where we moved her shadow. So her shadow didn't match her. And we didn't end up doing it because it looked like it was misleading. It looked like she was being followed by somebody. Like, it was logically didn't work. It was like a bridge. Okay. It was a bridge too far for the logic. But we did play around with splitting her from her reflection or her shadow a few times. And I think that one's probably the biggest one that survived in the movie. So we did pull back.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Very cool.
Showed some restraint, some version of restraint.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. So we've talked a little bit about your interest in music and playing and performing and different things. You know, and outside of film, tell us about how you got introduced to playing. And yeah, you play violin, correct? The violinist.
Yeah, that's right.
How were you introduced to playing the violin?
So my mother is a musician. She's a performance artist, musician, classically trained pianist. And so when I was very young, I learned piano first, and violin was my rebellion.
Oh, nice.
It was me being
Nice.
like, "Fuck you, mom! I'm doing my own thing." I was a big nerd. It was very much not a real rebel, but no, it was just so I was already playing music and knew how to read music and all that good stuff. And I think we went to see a show. I think we went to see like an orchestra performance or something, and I was like super impressed with the solo violinist. And I think on the way home, I like told my mom, I was like, "Mom, I want to play violin." She's like, "Okay." So
Nice.
I think we got like a really cheap, we went out and rented like a really cheap, I was really young. I think I was like 7 or something, and a little like quarter size violin. And before I even started taking lessons and stuff, I just would just play it just by myself. And then I started taking lessons and yeah, sort of just kept playing and had a lot of fun with it. It really, there's a point in your life when you have to decide, am I going to be a professional musician, or is this just going to be something that's just for me? And not becoming a professional musician is like the best choice I ever made for myself.
Oh,
Because
really?
now,
Okay.
yeah, because now I have this, now I have something that's just for me, that is, my own personal thing. Whereas my work, right, it's still work. Like I love filmmaking. I love it. It's my life, but it's work. And music now
Mhm.
is something that is just for me, and I can play with groups. I actually still take lessons to this day. And it's
Oh,
really
wow.
important.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really important to me to sort of have that as something that again is just for me. And of course it's relevant to my work because I'll compose music or communicate with other musicians. But yeah, so I still take lessons. I play with an orchestra. I play with like friends bands and stuff, like they'll ask me to come record for them or something like that. So it's
Oh,
just
nice.
yeah, yeah, so
Okay.
it's just a part of my life that I don't do professionally.
Okay. What
Yeah.
with when you were initially starting, what were some things that that you were hearing, or some things that you were really wanting to strive for being able to play?
Yeah, it's interesting. I love Bach, who is like sort of considered to be sort of basic, I think. The Goldberg variations is obviously piano music, but
Hmm.
to this day, it's like when I'm stressed out, I'll just listen to the Goldberg variations, Glenn Gould's, recordings of them, and it's math music. So it's whenever I'm like trying to compose new music or anything like that, I always go back to Bach,
Hmm.
back to Bach, and so. uh, I would say early on, it was something that I was super interested in learning how to play. And to this day, I still am learning, new pieces of his music because it's deceptive. His music is all Western music. Everything comes
Oh,
from
yeah.
what he was doing, and it's mathematically perfect. It's actually quite musically challenging. Um, it's complex, and it is like it's going back to the basics, right? So
Hmm.
like you can learn Beethoven, you can learn Philip Glass, you can learn all these new fancy. Max Richter is writing beautiful music right now for strings. But for me, it's like always going back to his that early Baroque uh, music. We're deep diving right now
Yeah, no, no,
into violin music.
that's cool. Yeah. Where did the idea transition from playing into composing? Did you have an opportunity pop up? Where did that
I
come
think I
about?
always composed. So like,
Excuse me.
yeah, you're good. Even when I got my first violin before I even really knew how to play it, I was just sort of like kind of faking it. I'm sure I wasn't doing it correctly, but even then, you know, I remember we brought it home and I was so excited to have my own violin that I think I just like locked myself in my room and I just played what sounded cool. Again, remember I play piano, so, you know, I kind of already
Yeah, right.
understand chords and that kind of stuff. And so, you know, that's composition, you know, I think there's this like mystique to composition that all humans are capable of music, right? Like, can you pound your chest? That's percussion, you know. Can you vocalize? Yes, most of us can. That's music, you know. And so there it doesn't need to be this super hyper structuralized method of making music. And so I really think even before when I knew what I was doing, I was doing it. Or even on piano, right? Like as a little kid, I would go and I would play chords, and you know, you play for 10, 15 minutes. That's composition. You know, you're writing music. It starts in one place and it moves to another. So more formally, I would say it was in college. I started playing. That's what happened. I was improvising for a friend's film, and then
Oh, okay.
I think like people just found out that I would do it for free, and so I started compose. I did this like I composed a few short films in college for friends and stuff, just because it was fun for me, and that's really where I started doing it. And then as I was playing like bigger orchestral pieces, I would study the scores of the music, or I would study the parts. So I played with a Brooklyn Conservatory Community Orchestra. And so I would look at that music that I was playing, and then I would start to deconstruct it on my own in like a more simple, minimalist way. And a lot of the music, even for Imitation Girl, comes out of that. Like some of the main themes of Imitation Girl are inspired by Firebird. We were playing a Stravinsky piece, and so I think that there's some chord structures that he builds at the end of that piece that are just like some of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. And so it was a lot of like analyzing those chords that I loved so much and rewriting and replaying with it. And so, yeah, it was a lot of that
Wow.
was a lot of the
Okay.
process. Yeah. But you know, now
Huh.
these days,
Okay.
I'm so sort of focused on the directing and the filmmaking and pitching on projects and stuff that I'm not writing so much music, but I am really enjoying working with professional composers like Jeremy. And while I'd love to get back into it at some point, it is a very time consuming. It's just very time consuming, and so to go back into building an entire score for a movie might not be in my near future.
Yeah.
But I do love it, and I hope to return to it someday.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I think it gives an interesting angle as far as, you know, like playing music and then just being able to make movies. And then now it's like, well, I can, you know, somewhat have a say and be in charge, you know, as far as what music is going to be in my movie and what sounds and different things,
Yeah.
and having the education and the background to be able to speak with somebody who, you know,
Yes.
like Jason, you know, and you can actually know, like, talking and in conversation and know what the fuck they're talking about, you know.
Yeah, and I'll
It brings
still pull out my
a sort of
violin. Like I'll
refreshing angle.
still, yeah, and I'll still like, you know, record something on my phone real quick and be like, "Hey, I was playing around with this. If this inspires you at all, like this is some sounds that I was playing around with." And so, you know, there's still that participation, but in terms of like sitting down and writing out music,
Right.
we'll see.
Yeah, nice. Okay, all right. Well, look, Natasha, this has been absolutely awesome. This is wrapping up. I do have the one finale question
Oh
here
yeah.
for you, but this, you know, this has been incredible, and I truly appreciate your time. You know, this has been really cool, and being able to sit down and hear a little bit more about the movie and some of the music and your background with such. So first off, I just want to say thank you. This has been incredible.
Thanks for letting me talk about this stuff that I really like talking about. It was a pleasure.
Totally. Do you have anything, you know, kind of in the works? You'd mentioned something that's coming up. You know, this is also your
Oh.
opportunity to be able to tell people kind of if you what you can, you know, different things that you might have coming up.
Yeah, not I can't really talk about that specific stuff right now, but in terms of Lucky, we are now on we're on Shudder, so go watch the movie. And then speaking of
Yes.
music, we're gonna have the score coming out that I'm really excited about on vinyl. We will be releasing
Oh
with Burning
shit.
Witches, who did the Imitation Girl soundtrack. So that's coming in mid-May. So keep an eye out for that. You can follow them on Instagram or me. I'll be posting about it. So super excited about that. And then we will have the Blu-ray for Lucky coming out. And I'm really excited about, I've a lot of sort of like ambitious plans to go into a lot of the stuff we're talking about right now in more detail. So, you know, maybe a mini doc with Jeremy or talking about the production design. There's just so many talented folks on this movie who deserve to be like, their work it deserves to be spotlighted. So I'm hoping that we can do a lot of that with the Blu-ray release.
Awesome. Yeah. So cool. That you know, that is one thing I can say, and I wanted to elaborate too with Shudder. I had interviewed Damien Rugna just before this here, and his movie Terrified is also on Shudder, and I was, you know, kind of reiterating. There's been so many, yeah, but and there's been, you know, so many incredible things, and even, you know, movies outside of the United States that Shudder has kind of, you know, brought to my attention as a fan, and, you know, a lot of my friends that I have on this page as well too. So I'm super grateful, because, you know, it might have been something where I might not have seen Lucky at the time that I did as well. So totally. Really, really cool outlet, and I hope that they keep that up, because they're doing some cool stuff. The new Creep Show series is ridiculous. Like, it's too good for its own good.
yeah, they're brilliant. They are fans of the genre first and foremost, and I think you can really you can feel that it's in the DNA of their organization. So they're really wonderful, and I really have been enjoying working with them, and having the movie on their platform has been great. So
yeah, okay, nice. All right, so this brings us to our finale. I was trying to think of a couple of things just through my research on you, and with playing and composing and your interest in film and different things. So I was thinking of, and I want to throw this your way, as far as if a local theater were to show a movie with a live symphony, and they were showing the movie, and the symphony was going to be playing, and you got to play in this symphony, what movie would you love to play the score along with the live show?
Lord of the Rings.
Oh, really?
Lord of the Rings is so much fun.
Wow. Okay. So
that score is so much fun. That's just, yeah.
You have to tell me about it, because my wife shits on me all the time that I have never seen it. And I think Peter Jackson, I know. Peter Jackson straying from his Dead Alive days, just, it breaks my heart.
Oh, but it actually, there's a lot of it in there. You'd be surprised. It's actually not such a slick Hollywood. Lord of the Rings is like kind of has some of that elements. It's kind of gritty. Like, he's playing around with a lot of the same techniques that he, you know, came from his early days. No, it's just a really fun score, because it's really big. It's you know, it's, oh gosh, I'm gonna get real nerdy now, but it's really reflecting back towards the ring cycle. So like the Wagner ring cycle, which is a lot of the same mythology that Lord of the Rings pulls from, and so a lot of that sort of like they call it like theme music, right? So like the idea of this like operatic score that's really telling the story alongside, and it has you know, like each character, each scene sort of theme has this like really present melody theme. It's like an opera.
Oh,
you know?
Okay.
And so it's really fun. I think the music from Lord of the Rings is, I mean, I love Lord of the Rings, but the music is like one of the best things about it. Maybe Star Trek.
Okay.
I'm just such a huge Star Trek fan.
One of the movies, or the a TV series?
I actually really like the score that Giacchino did for the 2008 reboot. I think it's a great score. So that one would be a lot of fun to play too. I'm answering your question as a musician. So like, what would be fun to play? Not necessarily like my favorite scores, but that has like really fun violin parts.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm gonna have to go, and I'm gonna have to watch the Daniel Day-Lewis movie, and then I guess I'm gonna have to finally watch Lord of the Rings too. So
just do it.
I'm not gonna be totally excited, but I think I'll do it.
You're gonna have, it's so much fun. You're just gonna have fun with it. So, but watch Phantom Thread. I think you'll dig it. It's a
Phantom Thread. That's what it was.
Yeah. Okay. It's a strange little movie, and I really love it. But yeah.
Nice. All right. This has been so awesome. I've gone a little bit even over our time, so I really appreciate it, and thank you very much. And I look
Thank
forward
you.
to what you have coming up
Yeah,
next.
good stuff coming down the pipeline. So yeah, I'm excited to share as well.
Awesome. All right,
Cool.
very
Thank you
cool.
so
Thank you so
much.
much. Yeah, as well.
Bye. Bye.
You take care.
He's a lo-fi horror guy. Yeah, he's kind of a guy, but he is so lo-fi, lo-fi, a horror guy. Yeah. Lo-fi horror guy has been recorded in front of a live studio audience.